Okay, everyone, I think I'm live. We had a little bit of a snafu because apparently, without my knowledge, YouTube changed the settings for the time zone selector for the live events, and it was set as a different time zone. So even though I set it for Saturday at 12 p.m., it was thinking I was on like Mountain Time, and therefore for Eastern Time, it would be starting in an hour. Anyways, I don't know why I did that. I don't think I accidentally changed it because it's like actually difficult to change it. But as soon as I saw that I had set it to noon and it was still saying I had an hour to go, even though it is noon, I knew there was a problem. So I do apologize for that. Now I'm totally understanding if no one shows up because of that. But I have to do it at this time, guys. I'm sorry. I have other stuff I have to do this afternoon. So I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind, for those of you who are here, I am going to go ahead and take a moment and just remind people that we are indeed having a Q&A right now. So give me a moment, guys and girls. I am home, Steve. Give me 1 second. I'm just sharing the situation on Facebook. Alright. Okay, there you go. So, hopefully, I mean, I waited till the last minute to share it on social media anyways, so I probably, but for anyone who stumbled on the channel, unfortunately, they're probably going to think we're starting in an hour, but they can catch the rerun, I guess. So I apologize for anyone who was confused by that. But good morning, or good afternoon. My name is Nick. This is Board Game Brawl. This is our weekly Q&A. Hello, Lillian. Hello, Icy Skater. Hello, Steve. And anyone else who is in the chat. We are going to talk stuff and things. Anything you want to ask me, I'll do my best to answer unless it's really out of left field and I don't feel comfortable doing so. Why is my YouTube camera so zoomed in, but on my feed it's not? Strange. That's okay. So, anyways, what's been going on? Didn't get the reviews done I wanted to this week. I have no choice but to get one of those videos done today. And then tomorrow I'm going to spend a good chunk of the day working on review and a lost reviews video. Then at some point next week I really do want to get another top 10 knocked out. In the meantime, in my free time, in time I would have been playing video games anyways, I am streaming them. So if you guys are curious to get some content from me, even when I'm not doing board gaming stuff, and again, this doesn't interfere with the board gaming stuff because and by the way, well, we'll get back to that in a second. You can check out BGB_live on Twitch. There's also a BGB Live Facebook page and a BGB Live Twitter that have just placeholder art until I get my new art from the artist who did stuff for this channel. And that's where I'll tell you where I'm streaming. We tried to stream Persona last night and was mostly successful, except for number one, I had horrible bandwidth for some reason on my internet, and number two, I didn't realize that Persona had about an hour and a half of cutscenes in the beginning of the game, so it was more like watching me play a movie. But there's other fun stuff that I've got planned, and you can check out my videos of Prey coming. You can watch the old clips on Twitch, or you can watch them on the YouTube channel for BGB Live. Now tonight, if to get back into the realm of board games, I'm going to be having my group come together, and Seifel, don't worry about it, man. I'm just pointing out that I'm waiting on art. I'm not trying to rush you. Seifel, our amazing artist, is in the chat. Don't worry about it, man. It's not what I was intending to do. I was just mentioning that I'm waiting on art. But anyways, tonight we are going to stream board games on Twitch. Now, eventually, when those are going to migrate over, the pre-recorded videos are going to migrate over to YouTube. But if you want to catch it, I don't know when that's going to be. It might be a few days. If you want to watch it live, go to BGB_live, and you can check that out. We're going to be playing a couple of party games just because they're simple and they're fun for the cam. Probably Joking Hazard. There's a little game I don't know if it's good or not called Chemo Mimi Panic from Japan Made Games. I want to try out. This kind of like a werewolf thing, I think. And then I have the expansion for Clank, and we've already played Clank in my group, and it's a big hit, so we know that's going to be a lot of fun. Other things, people have been bugging me to play Adrenaline. I don't know if that's good to play for the first time on Twitch. If I think I can get a good handle on the rules, I will first, because there's always people who complain like, whoa, why are we gotta watch you read the rules on camera? It's dumb, bruh. So we'll see, but we'll have fun, I think. So check it out. Like I said, BGB_live. You can check on the social medias for that as well, and eventually those videos will migrate over to YouTube. The video game videos will go to BGB Live for YouTube. I know, it's too much, man. That's why I hate doing this crap, right? Like, you'll notice that on none of my videos, like at the end of my videos, I have a little placard that says, subscribe on Facebook and blah, blah, blah. But I don't ever harangue you with it, I don't think. Because I hate doing that. Oh, boy. Okay, so let's see. Icy Skater asks, have you played Frostgrave? It looks really interesting. What are your thoughts? My thoughts are I own the book and have for like at least a year, and I never got around to it. I was a bit disappointed that it required more work to play than I thought it would. You have to basically proxy in miniatures and stuff like that. It's a miniatures war game, essentially. It looks interesting, though. Maybe I'll get to it eventually. Let's see. That's an interesting question. I didn't know about this at all. Tasty Minstrel Games crowdfunding campaign for The Flow of History moved from Indiegogo to Kickstarter this week. I wasn't even unaware of the situation. I can't help but think we were part of some marketing research experiment. What are your thoughts? This is from Darth Ed 77. Sure sounds weird. Tasty Minstrel Games has been a very odd company because they made themselves on Kickstarter. They are a Kickstarter board game publisher, or if you want to just put it in very general terms, a crowdfunding Kickstarter publisher. A crowdfunding board game publisher. That's why they are a business to this day. But it seemed like they wanted to go big, and they wanted to not have to crutch on it so much. So I think at some point, like, the owner of the company made an announcement that they wouldn't be using Kickstarter, or they'd only be using it for select things. And then I hadn't heard much from them. It didn't seem like they were doing much. They were importing a lot of games. Like, they brought Orleans over and published it under their banner, even though it was an existing game from Europe, from DPL or Doppel Games. And I don't know. Indiegogo, I always feel like it's like the Wild West of crowdfunding, and it's where you go if you're desperate. Now, there have been very successful Indiegogo campaigns, but they seem to be the exception that proves the rule. It's just very strange. So I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I don't really have specific thoughts. But I've played so many bad Tasty Minstrel games. In fact, the only good games they seem to have are the ones that they import or adapt. So in other words, like Cthulhu Realms was okay, but they took Star Realms. Orleans is amazing, but it was already a game. I already liked it. They just published a deluxe version of it. So that's my thoughts on Tasty Minstrel Games. I don't know what's going on with their crowdfunding. Do you wear a watch, and if so, what brand? No, I never wore a watch. I think when I was very young, I wore a watch. It was always kind of an annoyance. Since, the advent of the 2000s, since I've had a cell phone, I've had zero reason to wear a watch. I'd actually be very curious how watches are selling nowadays, watch manufacturers and watch distributors. Like, they got to be suffering, right? I don't think a lot of millennials wear watches at all. I think they're right in the same bucket as diamonds. Like, millennials don't buy diamonds, and they probably don't buy watches either. And in that case, it's more of like, why do we need it? We don't need it. But, rich people are always going to buy really fancy watches. I think that market is probably going to be solid forever because it's a status symbol. But as far as, like, utilitarian cheapo watches, those have got to be suffering. Look, they couldn't even sell the iWatch, or what's the Apple Watch. They're still trying, but I think it was a big disaster. Are you excited for the StarThead77 says, are you excited for the Star Wars Rebellion expansion? I am, and I'm not. I am in the sense that Star Wars Rebellion is a fantastic game. I reviewed it on my channel if you're curious about my more detailed thoughts on it, but it's great. It's not a game I get to the table very often, and because 2 players, and I usually have more people than that to play with, or solo. So that's a weird spot to be in. But also, I don't like Rogue One. And so I'm not excited about the stuff they're adding. But it is just more Rebellion. I guess it doesn't really matter. So in that regard, it's not a big deal. So I'm mildly excited about it. But I don't tend to get hyped about anything anymore. Big Bang 007 says, "Hey Nick, what's that? What's the big Boo Booty box behind you?" Oh, that is the newest expansion for Carcassonne. Kent Chongar Nimongi, this is why I don't say the names anymore. It says, "When are Gloomhaven and Aeon Zen reviews coming? Aeon Zen with or without expansions?" Aeon Zen review is coming very soon. I have one of the small expansions for Aeon Zen's, obviously the new big one. And by the way, that's not an indication whether I like the game or not. I bought the expansion before I'd even played the game just because I had store credit somewhere. So you'll have to wait and see the review to determine whether or not I'm ever going to review the expansion. And if I did, I don't know that I'd do a whole video for it because it looks rather small. As far as Gloomhaven, we'll talk about that soon. I can't promise anything on that. Steve Weber asks, "Do you know?" That's an easy name. "Do you know or like The National? Do you keep up with new music like you do with movies, TV? Is it as important for you?" So The National, I can't say that I could name a National song. I know that I've heard them before, probably playing on Pandora or on the Spotify playlist, and I think I've liked what I've heard of them, but I can't say for sure. I couldn't name a song from The National. I actually think I get them confused with Stars all the time. And then as far as keep up with music, I try. I really don't as much as other things, but there's definitely I cater, or I work on my Spotify library every single day to some degree, adding songs, making playlists, and I just don't think I add a lot of new stuff, but I'm always discovering bands that are new to me. So sorry, I'm stifling a sneeze. It wouldn't be a Q&A if I wasn't stifling one of my allergy sneezes, because these Q&As takes place so early in the day. Okay. But yeah, music is important to me, but I don't think I keep up with it as much as I should. Bacon Ham says, "Do you remember me? How could I forget? I try though." Big Bangs 007 says, "I think they can sell a lot of watches in China and other upcoming countries as a status symbol for new wealth." Well, that's true. In a lot of places where there's quote-unquote new money, they can definitely do that. But again, I say, and I said that before, I don't think the market for rich people watches is going anywhere anytime soon. I think the mid-level, mid-tier, walk into Sears and buy a watch market is drying up. If I'm speculating. I'm sure I could Google and there'd be an article for it, but I don't really want to do that. Although I might do it in a moment because I think we're running out of questions. Hello, I just got into the hobby recently. This is from Marlon Estella. "I just got into the hobby recently and already purchased several games to add to my collection." Oh no, it's got him. The bugs got him. "Overall, I found that I am into strategy, which is mild to heavy thinker type games. Can you suggest anything?" I mean, I can suggest a lot of things. That is not typically my wheelhouse as far as like heavy strategy. I like more action and tactics oriented games. But you might try, well, Star Wars Rebellion we actually just talked about since we brought it up. Star Wars Rebellion, you would think like, oh, a Star Wars game is probably pretty random dice chucking fest. Star Wars Rebellion is a pretty thinky, tactical, strategic game. Both tactics and long-term strategy. I would also suggest one of my favorite games has always been Seasons, which is a card and dice game. However, it rewards long-term planning and building combos and things like that, and it's a very beautiful game to look at. I would recommend Imperial Settlers. I'm just thinking about games that are in my top 10 as of last year. Imperial Settlers is a fantastic card game with it's got Eurogame elements, but it's card driven. So check that out. Check it off too. We can make up some stupid questions if you want to just kill time. Dude, this whole Q&A is about stupid questions. What are you talking about? That's what I expect. No, actually, sometimes you guys shock me with your incredibly intelligent and thoughtful questions that I am not equipped to answer. because I am not those things. Bluke says, I just grabbed Clank! Exclamation point off your review. Can see why you like it. Something about the way the cards work gives it a much better feel than, say, Thunderstone, and I couldn't explain why. Well, it's because the theme is much better integrated. Thunderstone does have a good theme compared to other deck builders because you're going down into a dungeon and fighting and things like that. And your monsters are coming out, the Thunderstone Bearer, and you equip yourself. So yeah, the theme is strong in Thunderstone, but I think even more so in Clank, because you're going down, you actually see yourself going down through the dungeon, and you have to run back out, and you're grabbing stuff, and you're constantly under assault by this dragon. There's a sense of urgency and tension that's just not in a lot of other deck building games, including Thunderstone. Also, fuck Thunderstone. I'm just so annoyed with what they've done with that game. Could they have possibly run that game into the ground more? The expansion will come out, or the new version of it will come out. People will buy it, and then people will forget about it again. Craig Vivian says, what do I have to lose by getting into the hobby? I mean, will I lose friends, family, money, love? Craig, are you not in the board gaming hobby? Because I think you've been in my Q&As for quite a long time. Maybe you're just a dabbler. You're not going to lose friends, family. You're going to lose a lot of money. You're not going to lose friends because it's a social experience. You'll probably make new friends. You can probably coerce your existing friends into the hobby. Your family, if they haven't abandoned you yet, will probably be okay. That's a big yet. And love, well, it all depends. You really better have a partner that's into board games. How about tactics then? I'm open-minded to try. Well, then you've got a lot of options. If you want tactical games, something like Summoner Wars, I think, mixes good strategy because you're doing a little bit of pre-deck building together with tactical maneuvering on the board. Icy Skater says, you are totally lucky you decided not to back Super Dungeon Explorer Legends. That is turning into one never-ending Kickstarter. Yeah, I mean, I backed it for $1, and I fully, at the time, I was just like kind of low on cash, so I said, they're going to open the pledge manager. Let me back it for $1. They've already said we can do it. I expect to add money later. When it finally came time and they said, okay, the pledge manager is closing soon, I said, no. No. You know, the same thing happened actually with, just to tell you that I'm not singling out Soda Pop Miniatures. I'm hitting the table too much. I'm sorry about that. I'm seeing it on my camera. But just to show you that I'm not singling out Soda Pop Miniatures, I did the same thing with Massive Darkness for Cool Mini or Not. When it came time for me to finalize my pledge, which was $1 for Massive Darkness, I had already played several bad games, Cool Mini or Not games in a row, like The Others and World of Smog, and I was just like, no. I'm not doing this. I'm not being suckered into this again just so that I could get exclusives. Oh! All right, give me one moment, folks. I'll be right back. Okay, that was either me blowing my nose or the fastest bowel evacuation ever. Or maybe I didn't make it. Bringing out the toilet humor this morning. Let's see. Hold on. YouTube is being finicky. Okay, Steve asks, here's a tricky one. Bovril or Marmite? Steve, that question is very tricky, but for a reason you're probably not expecting. I don't know what either of those things are. Luke says, have you tried the Arkham LCG yet? Has become my #1 solo game, and it's not really close. I have tried it. I'm not ready to formulate my opinion just yet because whether I'm incredibly enthusiastic or not about it, I've only done it once. What I am going to do is play it one more time solo by myself, which is redundant, I know. But what I mean by that is then I'm probably I'll do a review, and if I end up really liking it, that might be one of my primary solo stream games. Any new beverages that are tasty? Asks Icy Skater. You know, I tried that Fruit Loop milkshake at Burger King, and it's awful. Have you ever said to yourself, I want a milkshake that vaguely taste like Fruit Loops, but more importantly, as you drink it, you can taste the desiccated Fruit Loop remnants, almost like pulp from really thick orange juice. If that's what you've been clamoring for, get to your local Burger King. If not, I would pass. But I'm not a big milkshake person anymore anyways. I've discovered as I've gotten older, it's very strange. When I was young, you know, when you're a kid, and especially back like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they teach parents that milk is awesome for you. Like, milk is just like the greatest thing, and kids should be drinking milk all the time. Now I've gotten a little bit older and you discover that, oh, you're just straight up feeding your kids just calorie boosters. Just like, and it's probably not that good unless it's like skim milk. But whatever, that's what I did. I would have my mom would make a big plate of eggs and I'd just drink it down with an entire glass of milk. As I've gotten older, I've actually gotten slightly lactose intolerant. Not like majorly. There's people who really are and can't have any kind of milk. But if I have like a milkshake, or if I have like a big thing of ice cream from Dairy Queen, or if I like have cereal with a ton of milk in it and just like drink all the milk afterwards, I feel sick afterwards. So I can't handle those kind of drinks anymore. As far as like other new things, I haven't really tried anything lately. I keep wanting to get a subscription to one of those monthly soda places that has like exotic sodas. I have enough subscriptions I don't use. Like I've subscribed to PlayStation Now and I've been playing nothing but other non-PlayStation Now games. Is there an IP you would love to see? Tadeo asks, is there an IP you would love to see translated into a board game that hasn't had one yet? Oh, absolutely. I did a whole list of those, and I don't think most of them have been, or any of them have been formatted over yet. You can see that it's one of my very first top 10 lists I ever did. The top 10 like IPs I'd love to see as board games, and I think I did the opposite. The top 10 board games that would make great movies or television shows. But my number one and number two are like Babylon 5 and Final Fantasy Tactics, and those will never happen. If Babylon 5 ever got the promised movie version that J. Michael Straczynski has had in development hell for some years, then you might actually have a chance at seeing that. Final Fantasy Tactics is a little more likely just because they've actually been doing stuff with the Final Fantasy IP lately. They've resurrected the old Japanese collectible card game, and they've had that terrible Chocobo game. So maybe. I shouldn't crack my knuckles on mic. I'm going to do it anyways. Scarecrows15 says, I recently watched a review of Xia, Legends of a Drift System. The expansion is set to release soon. Embers of a Forsaken Star. What have you heard about it? Are you excited about it? I am a backer of it on Kickstarter, so very much so. Xia is a game that sometimes I forget about because I can't get it to the table because other people in my group, regulars, hate it. Like, hate it. Because it is very random and it's very long, even if you set a reasonable point limit for yourselves. But I love it. I wish I could play it more. I know there's probably a solo expansion out there, but I hate retrofitting a game to be solo if it's not really planned that way. But it's I think there's unofficial solo rules that people made up. But I'll probably try that one day. But I'm still excited for the expansion, and I'll probably force some people in my group to play it or get some new, fresh recruits to trick into playing it. What I know about the expansion, I wasn't following it that closely. Sometimes I just back shit and then forget about it if I know I'm going to be interested in it. I know there's a really cool comet that travels through the galaxy or the sector, and you can either avoid it or harvest it for resources or something like that. And they made a really cool miniature out of it. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for anything Xia. Favorite Ben & Jerry's flavor? We just talked about I'm not a huge ice cream fan like I used to be. I'm not sure I've actually had specifically Ben & Jerry's that often. But I'll tell you just in general, I like chocolate chip... Well, not even chocolate chips, but I like cookie dough. Cookie dough ice cream is very good. Peanut butter ice cream, you can never go wrong with that. Cheesecake and birthday cake ice cream is pretty good. I like cheesecake in general, so... I skipped your question, Craig. I don't think I did. I think I just took too long to get to it. 5 to 7 questions back. I answered your question, dude. You gotta be patient. It's pronounced, Blukes says it's pronounced blue cheese. Oh, Blukes is a lot better sounding. Come on, isn't that obvious, Nick Minacan? Why would you pronounce C-H-A-N as can? If anything, people mispronounce it as Mina Chan because they think I'm making some sort of anime reference, and I'm like, no, it's just my Irish last name. But I think Blukes is better than blue cheese, personally. I'll throw that out to the chat. Vote, and whatever you vote, not only do I have to abide by that, but he does too. And I'm going to enforce it. Daniel Berger says there's something to say for deck builders with a board. Yeah. It almost feels like sacrilege because that's not what it's... I mean, you're not supposed to... I mean, that's kind of the point of a deck builder, is that it's just the cards, and that's all you have to rely on. I mean, that's what made Dominion so popular, I think, was that I would gather that a lot of people were into Dominion in the beginning because up to that point they'd been playing games like Settlers of Catan, which has excessive board build-up, Stefan Feld games, you know, a lot of games that maybe not like an hour's worth of setup, but a lot of setup. And instead, with Dominion, it's just like, okay, here's what cards we're using, here's your basic decks, let's get started. But having that board out there for both, I'll give that to Thunderstone too. Well, Thunderstone actually didn't need the board. Thunderstone would have been almost... Well, it needed the board to not be a horrible clusterfuck to set up. But it's not actually integrated into the game that well. Whereas something like Clank is. Clank, you need to be able to see where the different treasures are and move along the paths. So, and that's what Trains had too. I've kind of fallen out of love with Trains, but Trains had that going for it as well. Darth Ed 77 says, for a while there, it seemed like you'd found your niche as a board game reviewer with your reviews of anime-influenced board games. Do you feel that's still your quote-unquote wheelhouse? I don't, because, to be honest, a lot of times it's not even anime-influenced games. A lot of times there are games that have anime-style artwork, which just happens to be the predominant type of artwork, casual artwork, I should say, in Japan, for media and production things. And so I think at a certain point I realized, oh, some of these games are actually pretty bad and it doesn't really have anything to do with any anime. And some of the games that are directly based off of anime are pretty terrible, like Vista, or I keep saying Vista Mars, that's the name of a company. It's Terraformars. And sadly, games like Lupin the Third, which should have been amazing and has all the ingredients to be amazing, but turned out to be pretty bad. If not awful, but pretty bad. So, I don't know. I still want to do that kind of stuff, and I have a lot of Japanese games on my shelf that have that artwork, and in fact, hopefully I'll be doing a review of one of them, Chemo Made Me Panic, very soon, and I'll be doing a not review of another game. You'll see that soon. And I've got another one coming from Japanime Games very soon for the purposes of review that is anime themed, so... I don't know if it's my wheelhouse, but you'll be seeing more of them. Kevin Vandenberg says, do you have the urge to purchase expansions even though you have no intention on playing them just to complete the game? Or do you only expand games that you have fully explored? Do you only... Yeah, okay. I don't wait to fully explore a game. I'll buy an expansion if I think it just adds something cool. Most of the time, for the games that I like, an expansion will add at least something that I'm into. So, for example, Dead of Winter, this standalone expansion, The Long Night, is actually a pretty awful as far as expansions go. There were only like 2 things in it that I actually liked. Actually, there's only one thing in it I'd highly recommend, which was the building stuff. Everything else in that expansion was completely forgettable. I would actually say in that case, if I had known that ahead of time and if I wasn't a reviewer, I would have said screw off and not bought it at all. And I tell people now, get one or the other, but you don't need to own both standalone sets of Dead of Winter. Although I've heard that the new expansion that they're planning for Dead of Winter, if you want to use everything that expansion has to offer, it requires that you own both base sets of Dead of Winter. I have to say, if that's true, that is one of the shittiest things I've ever heard of in board game publishing. And I'm pretty disappointed in Plaid Hat if that's true. I would love for someone to say that's a false report that I read. But it was from Board Game Geek. I think it was Eric Martin's blog post. I hope I'm wrong on that, because that's pretty terrible, especially since you genuinely do not need to own both of those sets. You need one or the other. I told people in my review, if you already own the original Dead of Winter, don't bother with the Long Night. If you don't own any set of Dead of Winter, buy the Long Night and don't ever worry about the first set. And if the new expansion requires you to have both to do everything in the set, to use every part of it, is just terrible. Steve Weber says El Dorado looks interesting. Deck building race game from Kinesia, I think. I actually am not familiar with that, so I'll have to check it out. Let's see. Alexander says, I'm just skipping ahead because I accidentally skipped ahead. Go to hell, sucker, loser, die. This is the... I'm a little disappointed because by this point, someone who genuinely doesn't like me would have come up with some reason, but he just keeps saying that. But anyways. Oh, okay, there you go. Let's see. Now I missed my spot. I don't know about El Dorado, Steve. I would like to check that out. If what you say about it is true, it sounds interesting to me. I'm not a big Kinesia fan, but deck building, sure. Willie Loomis says, will you be reviewing Sword and Sorcery? I can't think of a more generic name for a game, and I'm kind of sick of those types of games. I know I shouldn't be. They're my type of game, fantasy, cooperative, but I hope it does something different than the other ones. Mushu Pork says, that's how I felt when I decided not to back Rising Sun. You're probably referring to my cool me or not comments. Yeah. Alexander, the guy who's spreading hate comments, is my spirit animal. Well, it's not bad as far as how spirit animals go. I should feel bad for buying the Fruit Loops milkshake, let alone drinking it. I know. I spent money on it. Have you played the Final Fantasy trading card game yet? Thoughts on it? No, I own the 2 of the starter decks. I never got around to it. Yeah, they should sell the Fruit Loop milkshake like OJ. Pulp or no pulp? I'll take the no pulp version, thanks. Yes, this is Matthew Wilson. That is an Iron Giant tee. It's one of my favorite t-shirts. It is kind of... I should have remembered this from the last time I wore it. It's kind of bad for the camera because the light is absorbed by the moon on the shirt, and it just kind of looks really bright to me on camera. Did you ever try the cheeseburger flavored Doritos that came out about 7 years ago? They were dreadful. No, but I did find out about Doritos, which was flavored Doritos flavored Mountain Dew, which was apparently something they tested just as a lark, and some people on YouTube actually tried, which sounded nauseating to me. Lillian says, tea or coffee? I was a coffee guy. I decided to try and drastically cut back on my caffeine. Yeah, guys have to understand. We make jokes about how little I was sleeping, but it's not a joke. I don't get a lot of sleep. I've gotten a little bit more lately since I decided to cut back on, work on the channel and stuff. But I was still drinking a ton of caffeine to stay awake. I was drinking at least 1 5-hour energy every day, almost every day, as well as at least 1 extra large coffee and several Monster energy drinks. And that was every day. And I decided to cut back. So one of the things I did was I cut out coffee and switch back to tea, because tea used to be my primary drink. I used to hate coffee and only drink hot tea. Tea still has caffeine, but I had to wean myself off of it. Look, when I made this decision, the week afterwards, I had constant headache. I was taking like 9 aspirin or Advil a day because I had perpetual headaches. My heart was palpitating, which I heard was a side effect of going off of caffeine. It was like arrhythmic. It was like... I'd be sitting there and I'd just feel it jump in my chest. I was fucked up. And so I needed to have some caffeine or else I would just have a total crash. Steve Weber clarifies an earlier question. Wait, Bovril is meat paste. Marmite is similar, but is made out of yeast. I mean, I guess you'd go full meats. If those are my choices. Mushu Pork says, how about that Mulan Szechuan sauce? How about the fact that someone paid like $10,000 for it on YouTube, on eBay? That's great. By the way, I've had that before. I had it when it was out, when that movie was out in theaters. Daniel Berger says the expansion fixes some of the randomness issues for Zaya, doesn't it? I'm not sure. That'd be interesting. If that's the case, maybe I can actually coerce my group into doing it. And there are solo rules, official solo rules in the new Zaya expansion. Well, there you go. You guys know more about it than I do. Adam Bishop says, hey, Nick, enjoyed the stream when it was working last night. I know. I hope it goes off without a hitch today. I can't wait to hopefully jump in and watch tonight. Thanks. Well, tonight I'm not using my capture card. I don't have proof that my capture card, my Elgato HDS, was responsible for the lag we had on the video game stream last night. Because I think I did a speed test while we were doing that, and it was saying I just had really bad bandwidth. I think it was just Comcast being a total douchebag as usual during primetime hours. Today, though, we're going to eliminate the variable of the capture card because I don't need to. I'm not going to be streaming from a console. I'm just going to be using my 2 webcams to stream us playing board games. So, have you tried Dark Souls yet, Nick? Like any of your friends have it? I know you yourself won't buy it. Well, why do you say that? I might. I'm actually interested in getting Bloodborne. As is a PS4 exclusive. I haven't played Dark Souls. I have played Demon Souls. I own Demon Souls. Excuse me. I had it a couple of years before I stopped playing video games back in 2012. I think that's that old, right? I know I had it for like at least a year before I stopped playing video games. And I played it a little bit. I was into it. I never finished it. I never even came close to finishing it. So I'm not against that type of game. I kind of like those games that are like brutally difficult and where it requires perfect timing and rhythm. But it's just not something I have too much to play right now as it is. I still want to finish up Prey. I still want to... I just bought a bunch of games on sale. PS4, by the way, the PlayStation Store is having a massive sale. Not a massive sale. They have a few games on sale, but massively discounted, including Doom 2016 for $20. The XCOM 2 for either $24 or $29 if you want the deluxe version, which is what I got, which includes all the DLC. And I bought Risk of Rain for like $3 or $4. Soma for $8. A lot of games I've wanted for a while, dirt cheap. So I'm going to focus on that for now. I probably won't be buying any physical games for a while, although I still want to get Horizon Zero Dawn, Bloodborne, the Game of the Year edition of Bloodborne. I'm hoping the Arkham Knight Game of the Year edition or Arkham Knight Complete Edition comes out within the next year or so, because that's the only one of the Arkham games I haven't played. And apparently it's the worst of the 3 or the 4. I haven't played Arkham Origins either. I've heard Arkham Origins got bad reviews, but actually kind of got a bad rap, so I don't know. Bluke says, found the Reaper main. I don't know what that is. Daniel Berger says, are you a fan of GMT games, war games, coin, C-O-I-N games, Chad Jensen stuff? I am not, Daniel. I'm very sorry. I was never into war games. Some of them seemed accessible to me, but and when it came down to it, I had too much to play as it was. So when people were recommending things like Fire on the Lake to me or A Distant Plane that seemed like they would actually be war games I could get into, not like advanced squad leader, I still hesitated because I had so many games I had a reasonable expectation I would like. But I'm not against them, and I actually admire people who are into that, because clearly if you're into war games, you have a lot of patience and a very tactical and strategic mind, and I just don't. And you're also, I find war gamers to be not nearly as shallow and superficial as people like me. And I guess I'm de facto insulting other people in the chat, and I don't necessarily mean to, but what I mean by that is that I put a lot of credence into what a game looks like, artwork-wise. I don't necessarily care that a game has miniatures, but if I do, I want them to look very good. If they don't have miniatures, I want the chits that you use to look very nice. And I think most war games don't care about that kind of stuff, but people can still get into them and let their imaginations run wild, and I kind of admire that. I'm just not like that. Bacon Ham says, just commenting on the salty person I blocked. You guys are getting a lot of Bugbear cameos. She's sleeping on the couch behind me. Luke says, any thoughts on Rebellion getting an expansion? Looks like they may be tweaking combat to be more like Forbidden Stars. That would be interesting. I haven't looked that much into it, but I'd be curious if that's the case. Fabian Unger says, did you receive the meme game by Fuck Jerry? I did. Once I complained about them and actually posted about it on Amazon in the Amazon review section, because people were giving that game great ratings, which they should, and I said, look, Kickstarter backers don't even have this shit yet. Please don't support this company. Which, by the way, probably a shitty thing for me to do, but I was upset. I might remove that review. But they did send it to me. I have it. We might actually play that tonight. But I haven't played it before, so if it's terrible, get ready. It's going to be a giant clusterfuck. It's a game that uses pictures of memes, which might be funny, might be awful. Do you play with your leg? The video is shaky. Yeah, sometimes I hit the table and it shakes, and I also sometimes my leg, I do one of those like bouncy leg things, just, without really meaning to. Ben Steer also asked about coin games. I'd like to hear your view on coin games. Also, I recently got Cuba Libre, and I want to love it, but I can't see it ever getting to the table. Yeah, but I mean, that's another reason why. I have one person in my group who loves war games. I mean, I've been over to his place, and he has... You think I have a lot of games. He has even way more than me. But a lot of those games are war games. He's really into it, and if I wanted to play a war game, I would give him a call and say, hey, Aaron, you want to come over and play war games? And he would just be at the door when I put my phone down. Like, what the fuck? I mean, so it's not for lack of trying, and I could get it to the table, but I just don't want to right now. Maybe in my old age when I have nothing else to do. Big Bang 07 said, I can see if the Dead of Winter expansion has some modules that expand on the new stuff added with the long night, but then you wouldn't need the original game, just the second one. You see my point. I don't know what they're trying for there. Not to mention the fact that I can understand them wanting to capitalize on something they know is successful. Dead of Winter was a hit. Let's get putting Dead of Winter stuff out. But at the same time, we were promised other games using that system with different themes. Like Samurai, Outer Space, Crystal Lake, like Friday the 13th. None of that ever happened. It's been years now. Guys, I'm sorry. My nose is all stuffed up. It's true about that Dead of Winter new expansion, Tadeo says. That's what I was afraid of. If you want to do the Warring Colonies module, which seems like a big focus from what I read, you need to have a board for each team. Eric Gergot says, are you going to try out the Scott Pilgrim deck building game when it comes out? If it's a deck building game that isn't that doesn't have like a horribly offensive theme, I will probably play it. I'm not a big Scott Pilgrim fan, but I still do it. I actually like the art style of, I have the Scott Pilgrim video game for my PlayStation 3, and it's like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, and I like the art style and the music a lot, so. Darthad says, Dead of Winter Warring Colonies expansion was announced this week. It supports up to 11 players and requires 2 base sets. So frustrating. Why would they do that? Steve Weber says, have you ever played Shining Force on the Genesis? It's like Final Fantasy Tactics, but simpler. Just simpler, but still good. Yes! I love the Shining Force games. I had them all. I had the original. I had Shining Force 2, which was my favorite. Shining Force 2 is amazing. And I had both there were 3 versions of Part 3 for my Sega Saturn. Only one of them got released domestically. In Japan, they did 3 versions of Part 3, each from a different character's perspective for the same story. And if you owned all 3, you could get an exclusive 4th disc that continued the story. And I got it. I had to send away to Japan. I had to get someone to translate my order form. And I never played any of them. I'm serious. I only played the base version of 3. I was in the early 2000s and late 90s, I was addicted to collecting video games. Most of them are gone now. I sold them. Let's see. If you do not like, Calvin says, if you do not like a prototype game, will you still do a game preview for it? Do you give recommendations to the creators? So, I will do some vetting on a preview I'm about to do. The game has to be a game. I have gotten requests for previews that look like something they just knocked out in an hour not even using Kinko's, just using their own home printer. And it just doesn't look like a game. And you have to have something there for me to work with. And it has to, at least have the rules have to have the reasonable facsimile of a game. Other than that, as long as it looks like it's going to look decent on camera and they have artwork for it, I will do the preview no matter what, because the preview is just a commercial. I don't necessarily like doing them, but it's a necessary evil for me to keep this going, to keep buying board games and things. Now, do I give recommendations to the creators? I stopped doing that early on. Some people would ask me, and I'd say sure, and I'd say I'd give them my honest opinion. Sometimes I like the games, and I'm like, oh, this looks actually really neat, and I'm not going to say that on camera, but personally, I would like you to send me a review copy later because I think it would be cool, and I'd always like them to send me a review copy, but I wasn't always as forthcoming with saying send me a review copy. I'm going to trash the shit out of it. But that's one of the reasons I stopped giving my opinion altogether, is because it did put me into that weird situation. And also, people would ask me, and I would say outright, well, it sucks, and I think you should change this, and this. And you would maybe be not surprised to know that some people don't respond well to that. A lot of people put their heart and soul into making a game. They struggle getting it to Kickstarter, finally do it, finally put it up there. They spend money to do a preview with me. They spend money on other advertising. They spend a lot of their time and effort. Maybe they quit their day job to put all their effort into this. And then you say, dude, this game, have you played a board game in the last 20 years? This is terrible. Why would you do this? And they don't want to hear that. Now, I wouldn't say it like that, but I have been brutally honest with people before, and they do not respond well. I'll tell you this, too. I've mentioned this story a few times, but just to really briefly mention it, one of the reasons I don't do reviews, actual opinionated reviews of prototypes anymore, or games coming to Kickstarter, is because of an experience I had very early on. I did 3 of those, and one of the 3 that I did was for a game called just the King's Abbey or something. It's a tower defense game, a literal tower defense game, and you and the other players work together as fantasy warriors, like a scion and a wizard and a warrior, to protect this tower. And I did the review of the type was awful, but I was like, all right, everyone that I played the game with, just put it out of your mind, just focus on the gameplay and the mechanisms. And I did the review, and it was just I like what he's going for here. This is just very long and boring and drawn out. And the guy was livid. He was like, how dare you? I gave you this prototype because I'm trying to promote my Kickstarter. I can't use this video. And I'm like, dude, you asked for a review. And that was it. That's when I decided I'm either not ever going to do it, or I'll do a commercial that doesn't give my opinion. And in order to fund the channel, that's when I made that decision. But it's one of the harsh lessons I learned, that people don't actually want to know what you think. They want to know what they want you to think. And it also is a lesson that board gamers, I think for a very long time, I held board gamers up as so much better than other fandoms and creators of different types of media, and they're mostly the same. Still prone to the same kind of petty nonsense. Calvin Brooks also says, do you think that we are in the golden age of board games, or that we are in the decline and the bubble is about to burst? I think we have been in the golden age of board games. I think things are starting to decline now. Now, I don't mean doom and gloom. I just mean things, maybe decline is even the wrong word, maybe evening out, which by its very nature can be a decline. I've said this before, and people disagreed with me on the last video, or the one before that, I can't remember, where I said there's a lot of crap coming out now. There are games that are derivative of other games, completely derivative. There are games that have no foresight put into them, games that are just quickly, simple, a few mechanisms, put it out with some nice artwork on it, shove it out there on the Kickstarter, make a few bucks, and that's it. There's a preponderance of games like that. Very innovative games that set the world on fire are few and far between. I think that's why, part of the reason, there's many reasons why Gloomhaven is doing well that actually have nothing to do with the actual game itself. And I think that one of the things is that this, whatever I have to say about that game, it is innovative in some ways, or at least it's using a lot of innovative things from other games, and people were looking for that. They sort of popped into a vacuum where we were between games like Pandemic Legacy and Time Stories, and it was right time for something new. And those types of games are becoming fewer and farther between. But you'll see another tiny lost game coming out soon, and it'll be the exact same thing. And that's kind of what I think. And I don't know that it's going to be like a crash, or a bubble bursting, but it's going to be a decline and then an evening out. Oh, Seifel, I'm so sorry. I assumed you were talking about Dark Souls, the video game. You meant Dark Souls, the board game based on the video game. I will be getting a review copy of that game, and I will play it, and I will review it. And that's all I can say. Demon Souls is the superior game, Jim Bach says, or Jay Limbach. I just can't make that judgment, but I've heard other people say that. I've heard people say that Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls were superior to the later entries in the series. People seem to be split on Dark Souls 2, although most people think it's just got a bad rap. And people seem to love Dark Souls 3 overwhelmingly. Calvin Brooks says, I'm not sure if I already asked, but what do you think about Sentinels of Earth Prime? I think any Sentinels of the Multiverse is great because I love Sentinels of the Multiverse. I just don't like... I posted about this on Facebook. I don't like the way Greater Than Games just invites controversy. They think they're not, but I promise you they are. I don't make it a point to pick on them. But the thing is, most Kickstarter projects just put out a project, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. They're not doing anything weird. Greater Than Games insists on doing stuff that looks shisty and weird to an outside observer, or to someone who's not a fanboy. I like their games and I am a fan, but I'm not a fanboy. So I can look at what they do with their projects and be like, that's a bit weird. So let's take, for example, just going back to the past. They tried to do a version of Sentinels of the Multiverse for Story War, which is a terrible game. And I called them out on it publicly. It made no money. And everyone's like, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing? Why would you do this? They keep making expansions for this game, even though they promised they weren't. Now they are letting... They swore they weren't going to do any more Sentinels of the Multiverse stuff. Okay, I guess they're technically not. They have failed to deliver any of the rewards from their Sentinels of the Multiverse project. That was like over like a year and a half ago at this point. Their big finale project. And so they wanted to do another game. They convinced Green Ronin Publishing, a primarily role-playing game publisher. They've done a few card games, but nothing like this. And they said, let us use your Earth Prime universe for another version of Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is kind of weird in and of itself. Like, you don't want to print Sentinels of the Multiverse anymore, but you're going to print an almost exact duplicate of it with a new paint job. Okay. And they're letting Green Ronin handle the publishing. But why? Why? You're a publisher. In fact, Greater Than Games teamed up with, or they either were bought out or they partnered with Dice Hate Me Games. You're a board gaming publisher. Why would you hand that off to someone else? And why would you even risk the implication of you, the bad PR, the bad optics of doing this, even if you're not directly publishing it, while you still haven't completed your rewards from your past game? They just do this weird stuff that in and of themselves don't amount to much, but together it's just like, what is going on? Do you not want to be a professional company? Do you not want people to take you seriously? Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. Let's see. Ken Charjar says, when will your review output be back to normal? I don't know. I'm trying my best. I'm trying to at least get to the point where I'm putting out like 3 reviews a week. Obviously, that hasn't been happening. I wish that I could. I wish that I can make a promise as to when that's going to happen. I hope it will be soon now. Seifel asks, but video game-wise, I do recommend all the From Software stuff. I love them all. Yeah, I want to get into them more. Definitely. Bloodborne, by the way, I don't think is directly from Software. It's just from a couple of the directors and producers, right? But maybe I'm wrong on that. Slayful said, I definitely love the story in Bloodborne the best, which is why I was so disappointed by how simple the board game is. Yeah, I kind of liked the Bloodborne game, although not enough to keep it, but it was just a really deceptively simple card game. Do Americans spend as much time thinking about food as they talk about food? If so, no wonder there's an obesity problem. I just brought it up because someone asked me about random drinks. I actually, despite the fact that I am obese, I don't think about food. I'm not a foodie. I eat whatever is simple and fast for me, which is, by the way, why I'm overweight. Because I just eat like junk food that's easy for me to get in a pinch because I don't cook. I also, it doesn't look like it, but I also have a problem with people who are foodies, who constantly talk about it, who are cooking as a hobby for them. I'm not bagging on anyone's hobby, but I don't understand it. To me, eating is kind of a disgusting thing, and you do it just because you must do it. I take no joy in it. Felbriggs video says, what Legendary Encounters IP do you demand they make next? So Legendary Encounters is from Legendary Game System, but they use like IP. So they did Alien, Predator, Firefly. They're doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer next. I'm a little bit hesitant about it because I don't like the designer's previous work. But it is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I'm at least mildly interested in it because I like Buffy a lot. So we'll discount that as an IP. But I've always wanted One Piece. I would want One Piece to be a standard Legendary game, I think. But you could do an Encounters game out of it. You could actually use the exact same mechanism from the best thing about the Firefly Legendary Encounters game, even though it had terrible artwork, is that you could have the ship. So the Serenity, you could upgrade it and it could take damage and things like that, and that would be a fantastic thing to do with One Piece, to have like the Thousand Sunny, or depending on when it is, the Merry-Go, and the Going Merry, excuse me. Oh my god. To have those as a mechanism, I think that'd be very interesting. But there's so many characters in One Piece, you could have a lot of content for a base game and expansions. So that would be my thing, but they'll never do it. It's very clear that the main creative director of Legendary, I used to remember his name and now I don't, is very much into 80s movies. That's why they did a Big Trouble in Little China set, which is a movie I love and a game that I hate. The worst Legendary set by far. It's very much evident that he's into 80s movies, he's into action schlock, he's into like TV series that were beloved to him. And I don't think he's an anime fan, so I would not count on ever seeing that kind of stuff. But it would be amazing. I actually promised him, I said, I'll do the work. Bring me on as a co-developer, and I'll do the creative work. Team me up with someone who's into doing the mechanisms, and I'll make up all the cards. Like, what the attacks and things like that. Okay, guys, we're almost running out of time, but I do want to try and catch up here. So no war games. What Daniel says, what about stuff like Dominant Species or Kemet, where there's conflict but not a pure war game? I'm not a fan of Dominant Species. I love Kemet. So yes, Daniel, you and I can find common ground there, and I'd be happy to play Kemet with you if we ever met in person. I love Kemet. I'm okay with Cyclades. It's like sister game. Aaron Silverman says, hey, YouTube is somehow connected to my account now instead of my son's. I don't know what that means, but I guess that's... Aaron, by the way, is the one who has war games that would be totally willing to play with them. Play them with me if I was willing. Bones and Banner says, brutally honest feedback is actually hard to get. That's true, and most people don't want it. There's a great comic online that has like people queuing up at two different booths, and one of them is one of the booths has someone in it, and he's looking very dour. And it says, on the sign, it says painful truths. And the other one has a queue of people like way out the door with someone smiling in the booth. And it says comfortable lies or something like that. I'm sure that was a not too subtle reference at what's going on in politics right now. Have you played Not Alone? What do you think? I have not played it. I'm sorry. Is that a video game or a board game? Thoughts about the Champions of Midgard expansions? I like Champions of Midgard. I've kind of not been into it that much lately, so I can't say I'm too excited for it, but I'd be curious to see if it fixes some of the issues I had, like the randomness. Fabian Unger says, which Kingdom of Death Monster new expansion are you looking for the most? Okay, this is really dumb because they're going to be the most inconsequential of the expansions, but I really like some of the promo type characters they had, like the Super Saiyan Survivors, Hyper Light Drifter. I know it's really dumb, but I like that stuff. But as far as like actual content expansions, the whole thing with the red, oh god, what are they called? Like the Red Witches? That stuff looks great. It's the Red People. And also the Magnetic Mountain, or the Reverse Mountain, looks fantastic. What about Stella Deus for Sony PlayStation 2? I've heard of it, I've never played it, so I can't really say. Eric Gergot says, I just want to say that I agree with your thoughts on board gaming currently. New games don't grab me as much now, but hey, it's better for my wallet at least. Well, that's true. Look, I'm not saying it's even like a terrible thing. It's bad for publishers who have put themselves out there, but for consumers, it's fantastic if the board gaming industry slows down a bit. Trust me when I tell you, from experience, you don't need that many games. Kenchar says, sometimes at some point he'll correct me on his name. Top 5 heroes and villains in Sentinels of the Multiverse. I love, oh boy, it's been a while since I've had to say their names. I love the Speedster from the base set. I love there was that one expansion that had a bunch of great heroes, the Cosmic one. I love the one that changes shape, that changes size. Excuse me. She goes from tiny to normal to giant sized, like Hank Pym. I love the hero that's actually 4 heroes or 5 heroes together. Super interesting, finicky, and kind of I've never known if we're doing it complete 100% right, but it's fun anyways. Villains, I'm not as into the villains. Like, I don't think about them that much. We just pick whatever one. But I like the one with the girl who's dreaming. She's actually the visionary as a child, and her dreams are coming to life and trying to murder you. She's pretty interesting. Yeah, I like the pirate. El Capitan, I think is her name. The Time Pirate. I agree in thinking that board gaming... Lillian says, I agree in thinking that board gaming is evening out a bit. I haven't done much myself and hardly buy anything except expansions and solo-able games. Yeah, and I think that this is an opinion that you're not going to hear very often because no one really wants to admit it. Definitely not board gaming publishers, and definitely not other reviewers who make their living doing this, because that's a bad sign. If an entire industry is slowing down, that's going to be bad for everyone who has decided to connect their livelihoods to it. It's something that doesn't happen with, like, say, video games, because video games have been expanding, have never stopped since the 80s. So since Atari, since the crash of Atari, but then the rise of Nintendo, video games have not stopped growing exponentially. Board gaming, on the other hand, has had a much rockier road and has more ups and downs. Wow. Darth Ed 77 says, Upper Deck hasn't specifically announced this, but the evidence suggests that the new Legendary X-Men expansion can only be pre-ordered at local game stores, not online stores. What are your thoughts? If that's the case, they are shooting themselves in the foot, and I don't think they realize what they're about to do to themselves. I am convinced that the decline of Dice Masters is because they made the same stupid decision. But I can't confirm that, so it's just speculation. Aaron Silverman says, maybe you don't like eating because you don't eat good stuff. Sure, but I also think eating is a pain in the ass, so I'm not really inclined to do it. Okay, I'm not inclined to eat good food. Brad Dickinson said, I think you said before you aren't a fan of Star Wars Destiny, but what are your thoughts around Fantasy Flight Games production? Are they purposely keeping supply low to drive up prices? It might just not be selling that well, and sure, I wouldn't put that past any company. Brad Dickinson says, or do they have logistical issues which keep them from producing enough for the demands? It's probably not that. I think it's probably, especially for Fantasy Flight Games, who plans all this stuff out years in advance, they're either dicking around to keep the supply low or in the demand high, or it's just not selling very well or as well as people think it is. I thought it was a pretty awful game, personally. Legendary Encounters Inner Space. Well, if you're going to make one out of Big Trouble in Little China, then that has about as much content for you to use. Aaron Silverman says, I was planning on bringing Not Alone tonight. You can bring whatever you want. We'll see if it's good for the stream. Legendary Encounters Angry Birds. Don't give them any ideas, Seifel. Seven Wonders, Smash or Pass. I don't know about Smash, but I'm not a fan of it. But I'm in the far minority on that. Seven Wonders seems to be an evergreen game at this point. Have you played Star Trek Ascendancy? Do you like it? Do you think the expansions will ever arrive? I like it. It's too long for me to ever get to the table regularly, but I love it in theory. I'm actually surprised the expansions haven't been out yet, because I thought at least one or two of them had been out already. Which board game got you into the hobby? Also, which video game? The board game that got me into the hobby was Magic the Gathering. The video game that got me into that hobby, I mean, I had an NES when I was like 5 years old and playing Mario Brothers, so I'd have to say Mario. But the one that probably cemented the deal was the Final Fantasies for Super Nintendo. Final Fantasy, which at the time was called 2, but in Japan was 4, and then 6, which was 3 over here, were the two games that are like, okay, I'm a video gaming addict. And Chrono Trigger, of course. And then we're going to end here. What's your game group's thoughts on Gloomhaven? You'll have to wait and see. I'm still debating how I want to do that, if at all, which I know is frustrating, but I promise you at some point I'll explain more. So that's all I can say for right now. Guys, we are over time, but the reason for that is because I love my Q&As. I love talking to all of you. I love answering your questions. Your questions are always awesome. They're either very thoughtful or at least so silly that I enjoy answering them. And I just love hanging out and spending time with you guys. So let me remind you this again. Go to twitch.tv/BGB_live, or just look up BGB_live on Twitch somehow. And that is our Twitch streaming channel. Follow me there. You will get notifications when we stream, not just video games, but tonight we're going to stream board games around 7 o'clock, okay? It might be give or take that time. I will change the title of the stream over there right after this, actually, just to remind people. We're going to play some fun party games. We're going to play a couple of heavier games, and we'll just take it from there. And eventually those recorded clips will end up over on YouTube. But watch it live if you want to. And stay tuned to this channel for more board gaming reviews eventually. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.